The marketing landscape is shifting faster than anyone predicted. The old maps don't work, and the brands that are winning aren't following a better playbook, they're pioneering on without one. This is Brandistry Buzz, a podcast for marketers who are ready for whatever comes next. I'm Nate Challen, brand strategist, marketing executive, and someone who's spent 3 decades helping brands navigate uncertain territories. Each week, we'll take one idea, in marketing, leadership, or innovation, and follow it through until it's actually useful. Real examples, honest takes, clear recommendations. So let's buzz! e.l.f. Cosmetics had the final spotlight at this year's Kellogg's Marketing Leadership Conference, with Jim Stengel interviewing former CMO and current president Kory Marchisotto and CEO Tarang Amin on the CMO-CEO relationship. There's been a lot of buzz about e.l.f.'s marketing and business performance, so going into the session, I was excited to hear more. But I left converted, believing that in fact, every marketer ought to be studying e.l.f. as a best-in-class example of brand and a culture that's ready for whatever comes next. Early in the session, Kory was describing how she approached the e.l.f.'s brand's positioning when she first joined the company. Like any rigorous CMO would, she consulted widely. The counsel she received from virtually every experienced marketer was the same. Create a persona, name it, decide what handbag it carries, then go after it with precision. Then she read every customer letter in the company's files. What she found there wasn't a persona, it was everyone, every age, background, identity, and aesthetic. She went back to those CMOs and told them she was struggling with the tension. They told her unanimously to stick with precision targeting. She did the exact opposite. Finding insights like this isn't uncommon, but the conviction to act against consensus is. As I was leaving the conference, I bumped into Kory as she was catching a car to the airport. I was holding an e.l.f. swag bag that they had given us, and I held it up to her, said, "You've succeeded. I'll be repping e.l.f. all the way back into the city." She smiled and said, "And just imagine what kind of hero you'll be when you get home." She was right. My wife Eva tested every product in the bag and has since ordered more. In less than 24 hours, e.l.f. had turned this middle-aged marketing executive into a household brand advocate without a single targeted ad, a persona decision, or a demographic bucket, but rather by welcoming me into the community. I went home and started listening to the Uncensored Renegades podcast where K-Boss, Kory's nickname, and Johnny Boy, Uncensored CMO's John Evans, go even deeper into how the company runs, and what I found deserved more than one article. So this is part 1. This week, I'll focus on how e.l.f. thinks about, communicates with, and builds alongside its community, the people that other companies call consumers. Next week, in part 2, will be about e.l.f.'s culture and the operating model that makes it all run and run fast. But let's start with e.l.f.'s results. 26 consecutive quarters of net sales growth, $1.68 billion in annual revenue, growing at 28% year over year. A 10-year net sales CAGR of 23% against a 4% category average. One of only 6 companies out of 546 publicly traded consumer goods brands to sustain 25 plus consecutive quarters of 20% plus growth. The average is 4 quarters. These aren't wins carried by a favorable market or a single product breakout. They're the output of a fundamentally different way to think about brand, community, and the market proximity. The numbers don't explain themselves, the operating philosophy does. One of the most quietly radical things Amin said at Kellogg was about word choice. Most companies use the word consumer. At e.l.f., they tend to use the word community. What's the community you're serving, and what do they value? It reads like a semantic distinction. It isn't. Consumer implies someone who receives products and messages. Community implies membership, reciprocity, and a shared stake in something larger than any single transaction. Where one implies an audience, the other implies co-ownership. Marchisotto built the reframe into a positioning concept. e.l.f. is a place of belonging. And a place of belonging, she argues, doesn't have an age or a handbag or a demographic or even a psychographic. It has values and open doors. Most brands define who they're for by deciding who they're not for. e.l.f. started with inclusion and worked outwards. As it turns out, the market for belonging is enormous. When Marchisotto joined e.l.f., the company had roughly $100 million in direct-to-consumer revenue and a brand that needed defining. She did what most CMOs skip. She read every single customer letter in the company's files before making the decision. The letters didn't describe a persona. They described a constituency that defied conventional segmentation. People across every age, identity, and background who had attached themselves to this brand. So she built the positioning around what she actually found. We made a tagline that represented all the letters that have come in e.l.f. is for every eye, lip, and face. There is not a single person who is not invited into this house. She's explicit that this isn't an easy path. It's way easier to say, I'm going to speak to women 25 to 34. Everyone is a huge responsibility. The tagline is not a sentiment, it's an operating constraint that every campaign, every product, and every channel decision has to clear. Most brands find it easier to exclude. If inclusion is the positioning, zero distance is the engine. Marchisotto defines it along two axes: zero distance between the C-suite and the community they serve, and zero distance between insight and action. This isn't a research methodology or a community management program. It's a structural choice about how leadership spends time and how quickly the brand can move from signal to response. 3 moments make it tangible. When Marchisotto put a meme on a TikTok live, 16,000 people showed up. The community lit up in the comments about a prestige bronzing dropped product priced above $40. Man, we want them now. Amin's first call after the session was to the head of R&D. A product sitting 18 months out in the pipeline got moved to 6. Not from a consumer insights report, because the CEO was in the actual conversation. On Twitch, e.l.f. launched a channel 5 years ago. Not because competitors were there, because they weren't, but because the data showed 77% of women reported being bullied on the platform. e.l.f. built a safe space at the intersection of gaming and beauty. When that community started asking about financial literacy and how to become entrepreneurs, Marchisotto called the CFO. Mandy Fields showed up on Twitch, and 110,000 people attended. For a CFO of a beauty company, talking about money, not mascara. e.l.f. is now among the top 1% of brands on Twitch alongside Red Bull. At DragCon, a drag queen told e.l.f. team that the product sizing created a real problem. The surface area constraints made application for drag looks genuinely difficult. That conversation went directly into the product development process. The community didn't just inform a campaign, it shaped what got built. We don't think about selling somebody a product, we think about how we are going to help make our community make their lives better, said Marchisotto. My Ready framework evaluates brand readiness across 5 dimensions: relevance, ease, agility, distinctiveness, and curiosity. With 5 subfactors, 5 times 5 times 5 gives a possible score of 25 per dimension and a total possible score of 125. e.l.f. rated a 114. Diving deep, I scored e.l.f. a 23 out of 25 on relevance, and the standout factor wasn't awareness or distribution, it's the sophistication of the community intelligence system. Zero distance creates a signal-to-action capability that no traditional research process can replicate. The Halo Glow do-it-yourself kit went from an observed organic community behavior to market in 7 days. The bronzing drop pipeline moved forward 12 months based on a single TikTok live. When insight reaches the people who can actually act on it instantly because they were in the room, the brand stays ahead of where the market is rather than reacting to where it's been. The lowest score for e.l.f. was on distinctiveness, where they still scored 21 out of 25. Their experiential distinctiveness is best in class. No other mass beauty brand puts its CEO live in the dialogue with 16,000 consumers or community members, or develops products based on a conversation at DragCon. The biggest watch out? e.l.f.'s brand asset portfolio lags its operating sophistication. The name and lowercase visual identity are ownable, but there's no sonic signature, no mascot, no proprietary visual elements that pass the naked test on a crowded shelf. The brand's distinctiveness lives in its behavior more than its assets. Powerful, but less protectable as scale increases. So what can you take away from this? Not every brand can be e.l.f. Not every brand should. But every marketer should be considering 5 things e.l.f. has done differently. 1. Read the reviews before you build the persona. Marchisotto's insight didn't come from a consultant or a framework. It came from a direct contact with what customers actually wrote. Your existing customer base has already told you who your brand belongs to. Most teams never look. 2. Put decision makers in the room where customers actually are. Not a summary of what they said, the actual room. The signal quality changes when people who can act on insight are present for the raw conversation, not a filtered version of it. 3. Swap consumer for community and mean it. The word shift is only valuable if it changes the relationship model. Community implies reciprocity. Ask whether your brand is genuinely set up to receive as well as transmit. 4. Build your innovation pipeline around community co-creation. Power Grip Primer didn't become the #1 selling cosmetic SKU in America because a product committee decided it should. It got there because the community helped build it. The community knows what it needs, and it will tell you, if you're close enough to hear it. 5. Let the inclusion be a strategic bet, not a value statement. e.l.f.'s choice not to narrow its target was deliberate and harder than segmentation. Marchisotto says so plainly. The market for belonging is also larger than any demographic bucket. That's it for this week. Next week is about what runs underneath all of this: the culture, the speed, and the operating infrastructure Marchisotto calls e.l.f. speed. How do you build an organization that can execute a Super Bowl campaign in 11 days? What does failure as feedback actually look like as a management practice? And what does it take to sustain 26 consecutive quarters of growth without letting success harden into a habit? That's next week, so get ready. That's it for this week's Brandistry Buzz. One more idea to help you navigate whatever comes next. If this episode made you think, subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's next. And come find me on LinkedIn where I'm posting between episodes, trends, takes, and the occasional things that I'm still figuring out. Prefer to read? Brandistry Buzz is also a weekly newsletter on LinkedIn and Substack. Links are in the show notes. I'll be back next week. In the meantime, stay ready.